Good evening, everyone. So last week, we had this subject of the creative process in Zazen, and I think that I didn't give such a clear explanation of it because it's a very difficult thing to explain. And so I'll give another try at it tonight, I think. It was one of my first questions when I began to sit Zazen, whether I would lose my impetus to write, whether I would lose language because I was entering no words, a place of no words and a practice of no words. And so it was of deep concern to me, partly because I was also a student and I needed to use words. I needed to be able to write a good deal in my studies. So there are a couple of words that I want to talk about first, a couple of vocabulary words before I go into it to explain. One is the word soul. We don't use that word so much these days. We don't hear it. It used to be very popular, and it used to be, popular isn't the right word, but it used to be a word that was much more in our vocabulary and in our thought. And I think just of late, the word soul is not so much there. When my teacher came to the United States for the first time, we went over to visit the retirement center at Panorama, where we had a sitting group. And the very first question that Roshi was asked was, do we have a soul? And of course, this came out of people's concerns about Buddhism, where we don't talk about God or we don't talk about an immortal soul. And so, do we have a soul was very concerning for this particular person. And Roshi's immediate answer was, well, of course you have a soul. But in Buddhism, we don't think of it as an immortal soul, as we see in Christianity, or some in the Abrahamic tradition, perhaps. So that, of course you have a soul. And what we mean, certainly in Buddhism or in Zen, it is that most inner source or force that generates life. It's the basis of our active, awake life. So it's an important touchstone for us, an important place that we are able to go to be able to touch maybe our deepmost, deepermost part of ourselves. And the other word that I want to say is the word inaugurate. And in the quote that I'm going to give, the word inaugurate comes into it. And to inaugurate means to put into action. So I'm reading a book right now by Gaston Bachelard, a French philosopher from the 19th century. I read one of his books years ago, and I don't remember a word of it. It was called The Poetics of Reverie. And I have no idea of what I read so long ago, but I remember reading it. But the book I'm reading now is called The Poetics of Space. And it's just a superb, and maybe because I'm old enough to be able to have grown into Bachelard's dialogue, perhaps I'm able to be with it in a much better way. But Bachelard is trying to get at the phenomenology of poetics before he can talk about space. By phenomenology, we mean explain one's experience. What's the explanation of our experiences? So he's searching around for this, looking around, and he comes upon a quote by another French philosopher, Pierre-Jean Jouet, I want to say. Please don't make that, might not be the last name. But this other philosopher then is looking at the nature of poetry And the image, as Beishlard is where does the image come from? Where's the first thought in our mind? An image, when it comes to mind, where does that come from? And what is the experience of that, is what he's trying to get after, to be able to talk about space. And so this is Pierre Jean comes up with this very simple statement. He says, soul inaugurates form. In poetry, soul inaugurates form. So simple. So this center of ourselves, this point or this place in which we are, the life force, perhaps we could call it. We are sitting in the center of it, and that inaugurates form. Soul inaugurates form. So simple. And Beishlard is very taken with this, and he says, yes, he just named the phenomenology of poetry. That's the subject, that is the experience and the generation of poetry. And we might have all kinds of past experiences of the form of poetry, but Beishlard says that's beside the point. Beside the point, at that very moment, soul inaugurates this point of form, which we are able then to see in image and be able to grasp via language. So what is this difference then, or what is this distinction, I should call it, between that and Zazen? And a big light went on in me, and I said, yes, well, that's so simple also. In Zazen, form inaugurates the soul. Really, so simple. We come with the whole body to sit meditation, to sit Zazen. And we inaugurate, put into action the life force within us, the soul. We touch the soul. So Zazen is not some kind of quietude that we just sit in deep silence without anything happening. Zazen itself is true action. So that word inaugurate, I thought, was so beautiful in the Pierre Jean's wording, or the translator of that, inaugurate. So beautiful a word, because it's to put into action the soul in Zazen. So all of our activity in Zazen is that movement of awakening. Inaugurating the soul is awakening. And I had not been able to just say it that simply before. And to me now it's so simple. And one must also beware of getting caught in language, getting caught by the language of that, so that we inaugurate it without looking at it as a form that we are creating, or the form that we are doing something. And yet we have to explain it. We have to explain it to ourselves. You know, when I have spoken about the brainwave and how the brainwaves act in the process of Zazen, people started looking at their own brainwaves instead of forgetting about them and just sitting. So it's very dangerous then to look at these forms or explanations that we take for things. And yet, maybe we look at them for a while and then we finally walk past them and we are able to just be without looking at or worrying about whether we're doing it or not. So this is Mickey, who is here online with us. You heard Mickey say weeks ago, she says, a poem always arrives in the middle of Zazen, and then I have to write it down immediately. That's exactly what is happening. In Zazen, we inaugurate the soul, and the soul inaugurates form. Form inaugurates soul, soul inaugurates form. And so that's exactly what was happening. She lifted up her soul, awakened herself in Zazen, and something came. So that's that simple. And what do I have I have nothing else to say about it, to tell you the truth. That's everything I could ever hope for about Zazen and the creative process. Yes, Steve.
So a question sort of struck me. You know, if this person, the poet or the philosopher, realized this, and I imagine that he's never sat Zazen before.
Right.
What does that say about the need for Zazen? Or would you say that
He didn't say Zazen. He only said poetry.
Right. But my question is, he realized something that we realize or can realize while doing Zazen. But does that speak to the need or the thing that we maybe don't need Zazen for this? Or maybe he was doing Zazen but off the cushion?
He was writing poetry. He was not sitting Zazen.
I know, but
and it doesn't mean that you can't realize all kinds of things without Zazen. It doesn't mean that.
Right, but
He saw into the nature of poetry.
So I guess my question is, we sit Zazen for, why do we sit Zazen?
To awaken your soul.
But we don't need Zazen to awaken our soul.
I think it helps.
Okay. I would agree. There's many ways to awaken the soul, I suppose.
Absolutely. Anything can awaken anybody at any moment. But it helps to put yourself in the environment. I mean, that's all we do, is we put ourselves in the environment of practice. And it's a lot easier to be with that than, say, to be downtown on 4th Avenue, walking down the street. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we put ourselves in the environment of it. And we have to recognize that the body already is emptiness. So we bring emptiness to emptiness because the soul is emptiness. So we bring the awareness of this to the awakening, to that opening into pure experience of the soul. Let me say soul, not the soul, of soul. Yes, Roger.
The point you made about the myriad concerns, including such as that you're not doing it. I just wanted to thank you for that point. don't know what else to say.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing to say about this. I mean, not really.
Yeah.
It's just, I had never been able to say the explanation of the creative spirit or the creative happening. And Bachelard is getting at the phenomenology of the moment of the idea, the moment when an image appears. And that's what he's been after in this, the phenomenology of poetics, so that he could say what space is. And I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
So I'll let you know. I mean, I find the experience of space to be the most incredible thing. That, to sit here and realize that this is space, that this body is space itself, that everything is space. To me, that is the most wonderful awakening that we received from Dogen Zenji. So, and I also have mentioned that my first teacher had this phenomenon about him, that when you were around him, you had this sense of incredible space around him that he wasn't trying for. It's just who he was. And his awakened mind then, made space, the sense of space, the feeling of space around him. And there was nothing clinging to anything. So it was always a wonderful experience. And so that has always been my joy in Dogen Zenji's teaching. The question of what is space? This is space. This is space. Not that I am space-headed, Spacey. But
Space for rent.
yeah, this is space. The body is space.
Eidō-san,
Yes, Mickey.
thank you for your kind words about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite overwhelmed. But I think of soul as a kind of food, thanks to my friend Barbara.
Sure. You mean as in soul food or just?
Yes,
I see. Well, it is that
yes,
also.
and I'm getting a good meal of it this Friday.
Okay. Well, in a sense, you could certainly say that because, first of all, soul is being delivered via ultimate kindness by way of the form of food. So you are receiving a life-giving
That's
force into the soul of the body. So I can understand when a particular culture calls it soul food, it is because it is such a deep expression of the voice of that culture, of the culture of Black America.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more than just, a name. It is a life-giving force that means, as they join together in the joy of that. So,
Exactly.
yeah. But I was thinking about your Mickey a few weeks ago when you said, yes, I sit Zazen and then a poem comes. That's exactly what I am talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Well, maybe I'll write a poem about soul food.
okay. Go
You
for
never
it.
know.
Go for it. Your soul will express soul food. Yeah. Yes, first.
This isn't necessarily about art or creativity.
It's okay.
It's something that struck me when I was sitting Zazen. Last week, I wasn't working and I found it very, not easy, but easier to sit and kind of be open and with everything. But I started a job at a plywood factory and I struggled this time. I was struggling, I have graveyard shift coming up, so I struggled with the dread of going back to work. I struggled with visions of plywood coming down the assembly lines. I'm frantically scurrying to put everything in its place. And I was just wondering how, if this is a question that you can answer, maybe not, but how can one deal with the dread of the mundane and the dread of survival
Yeah,
while trying to open up your soul?
yeah. Well, it's practice, of course.
Mm.
But truly, we should be able to walk in anywhere and be comfortable. And partly it may be that you think there's some difference between sitting Zazen and doing your work in plywood, and there's really not. So just do the plywood.
I actually noticed that doing Zazen made work easier.
Yes.
It made it a lot easier.
Yes.
But conversely, doing the work made sitting Zazen harder, at least for
Okay,
me.
I see. But there's no difference. There's no difference. Yeah, just be with whatever you're doing. And I mean, you think you're with plywood, but you are in the soul of trees. You are with trees all the time. And the way in which trees give service to us by allowing themselves to be turned into plywood for our benefit. So it's holy work. I mean, we are sitting inside a tree right now. Wooden houses are trees. So just be with whichever that is, and it gets easier. But truly, there's no difference in doing that work and sitting Zazen, really. Yeah. Thank you. There was another, Dennis.
I think what struck me was that sort of complementary. Soul inaugurates the form, and form inaugurates the soul.
Yeah.
Especially thinking of form inaugurating soul. If I think of form as the form of my life, the form of my activities, the form of my thoughts, and I think of times when I've engaged in forms of service,
Yes.
and that is enacting a compassionate soul, that is inaugurating a compassionate soul.
Yes.
And then times when the form of my life is taking on a more angry or jealous form,
Yeah.
I'm inaugurating an angry soul.
Yeah.
And so it makes me want to be a bit more careful about what forms
Yes.
I take on in my life.
Exactly. I mean, what entertainment, thinking
And
about
especially
it.
the mental forms.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Went in one ear and out the other, sorry. But, I mean, very definitely, the entertainment that we give to various kinds of avenues of form, they're not so healthy, let's say. So, and they can do us harm, actually, if we're not careful about respecting the form of the mind. The mind is form. So it's maybe it's an issue of self-respect, of not allowing that other stuff, into this body of emptiness. But you're right. It's all form. It's all emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is emptiness. But we fall into those. We certainly do. Yeah. But I see it as self-respect of what we feel we don't want to take in. I mean, we do that with all kinds of things. We respect ourselves so we don't eat garbage, for instance. So that's self-respect. We're respecting the body and the form. So it's the same kind of thing. And there's so much garbage right now. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So.
I never cease to be amazed at the varying facets of a Dharma talk that arise in this space. I'm just grateful for that. What kept running through my mind was about soul inaugurating form. I can't remember which master said this. You have to say something.
Yes. Yeah, that's Katagiri Roshi.
Katagiri Roshi. Mm-hmm. So, to me, that is the imperative of making form. And not just poetry or painting or dance,
Yeah.
but like every gesture
Yes.
as we interact, and I'm so moved by your wrestling with the intersection of Zazen with your work in the factory. And I mean, it reminded me that like in Zen there's this this imperative to care in all actions. So like when you leave the bathroom, you take a moment and you wipe the droplets because you're aligning that with all of the other beings in mind. And I was just thinking about, you know, there will be someday there will be a small child who lives in a room constructed of the plywood that you cared for. And I, you know, so we are the benefactors of who knows which beings brought into this space and alignment. So there is soul in this place. And so, I mean, I suppose that's the opportunity in Zen, is to think, okay, I have to say something now.
Yeah.
And there is no, and if I don't, it will never be uttered.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you who built these walls. Fletcher and Mickey and Steve, you here to build this? No. And I were the only ones here who did build it, but we built these walls. And then we muddied them, you know.
Steel beam.
Yep, we put up the beams. Somebody did all of the electrical work, so maybe you'll touch the next piece of plywood that'll go into someplace special too. So, yeah. Yeah.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that brilliant insight about soul and
Isn't it
operating
simple?
form. And
Isn't it
form
great?
and operating- It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I guess a question that I had when you shared that was, in the past, I've had my soul inaugurate form. And that form has become a distraction that I feel like has pulled me away from the, you know, that deeper work with the soul. And I was wondering if you had any advice with dealing with the distractions that can come from a form.
What do you mean by distraction?
A lot of times the forms that I've created sort of start to get wrapped up in neurosis, ego,
Okay.
all kinds of things like
Yeah.
that. I think my intuition would say to just continue with mindfulness practices.
Yeah, but I mean, that's also the process of art. You know, that one of the most difficult things to learn in art is when to stop a painting or anything, when to let it be finished. And most of us wreck it. So that's a great skill to learn to resist doing too much. So maybe that's where some practice you might think about doing, of standing back from it and asking, are you finished? Even though it may not look finished or something like that, but maybe it is. Maybe it really is.
I know Da Vinci said art is never finished, only abandoned.
Well, there certainly is that, and on every painting that I've ever done, I could improve on it, but but I'm done, and leave it, and that's an offering to the gods. The imperfection is important.
Have you ever found distractions around your forms that kind of have pulled you out of a deeper sense of self?
I don't worry about the deep sense of self. That's not what I worry about.
Yeah.
Just live your life. Just live your life. That's deep. To live is deep. Just to be here breathing is deep. And maybe that's you, maybe, I don't mean you, but anybody, maybe we're driving after that too hard. And it's not necessary because it's all right there in front of us. So we don't have to drive after it at all. Just do your art. That's a lot. That's a lot to do. Yeah.
Eidō-san,
Yes, Mickey.
would you like to hear my soul food poem?
Let's have it, Mickey.
Chicken and dumplings, cornbread and ham, pie and ice cream, gumbo and rice, curries of all stripes. I can cook them. Shakyamuni Buddha ate them too. The warm embrace of my adopted family. I could never starve, since so many give me food, and I'm so grateful.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Lovely, lovely. Yeah.
You know, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, a little bit louder if you could, Roman.
Testing. Roman,
Yeah,
is that better?
yeah, that's better.
Okay. I wa- wanted to say thank you to Mickey for sharing the poem. And it reminded me right in the beginning when you started to speak of the soul and how we don't use the word so much anymore. I feel like in my line of work, we hear it a lot. When I used to be involved with music and dance, the music has to have soul for us to feel it, to be moved to dance to it. And I don't recall who was talking about it, but literally, people are breathing their breath and life into the instruments, or singing, or like even Mickey speaking the words of her poem. You're
Yes.
exuding your breath and putting that nourishment into the sound. So that's what came up to me
No, it's beautiful.
in hearing you speak of the soul.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very beautiful, Roman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody, anything?